Welcome to our fun little study group for PP 5361 Theory and Management of Public Service Organizations. These are the readings from the required text, Managing Human Behavior in Public and Nonprofit Organizations, Chapter 4.
It is good to be here. And I have to say, looking at the syllabus, the timing of this specific deep dive feels like a cosmic joke, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's what, mid-semester? Everyone's deep in it. We're all refreshing our email for grade notifications. The calendar is just a mess of deadlines. And what is the syllabus demand we talk about today?
Managing stress.
This is a little on the
It
nose.
really is. But, that actually makes this maybe the most critical session we've done so far. The irony is palpable. We're all stressing about studying stress. But the goal here is to flip the script.
Right.
We aren't just going to recite the textbook definitions at you. We need to dismantle what stress actually is, both biologically and organizationally, so that this material helps you survive the exam and the job.
Right. And the text makes a pretty bold promise that just understanding the mechanics of this can actually, lower your blood pressure. So I guess we're going to test that theory.
Let's do it.
I want to start with the hook the authors used, because it made me laugh out loud, which was a nice stress reliever in itself. They open with this anonymous quote.
Oh, I know this one. It's fantastic.
It defines stress as the confusion created when one's mind overrides the body's basic desire to choke the living daylights out of some jerk who desperately deserves it.
Sickles. It's crude, but it's arguably the most scientifically accurate description of the fight or flight response I've ever heard. It just captures that visceral impulse that we all have to suppress, like, on a daily basis.
It captures that internal friction perfectly. But to keep us from just spiraling into complaints, the text introduces us to a case study right off the bat, a character named Susan. And honestly, reading Susan's profile felt like reading a horror story written specifically for public administrators.
It's the classic be careful what you wish for scenario. So, Susan is an assistant city manager. She's ambitious. She moved for this terrific opportunity, and she's genuinely committed to public service. She wants to make a difference.
But when we meet her, she's not making a difference. She's sitting at her desk with her head in her hands. Let's break down the laundry list of what's hitting her, because I think everyone listening will identify with at least 3 of these things simultaneously.
It's a total convergence of storms. So first, she has strategic plans due in 2 weeks.
That's the big picture stuff, the long-term important work that needs deep focus.
But she can't get to it. Why? Because of all the immediate urgent work.
Which is, of course, a political minefield. She apparently angered a city council member the night before accidentally because she didn't realize he hated a project she recommended.
And that's such a classic public sector stressor. I mean, in a private company, if you have a bad idea, maybe you lose money. Okay, in Susan's world, a bad idea, or even a good idea that a politician happens to hate, is a career threat. It just introduces this level of volatility that you can't really control.
And then there's the sensory overload. The text describes her phone with 2 blinking lights.
Right.
One is a pothole complaint standard bureaucracy, right? But the other is a police incident. And both callers are threatening to go to the newspaper if she doesn't pick up right now.
High stakes, low control. It's the perfect storm.
Yeah.
And on top of that, she has 4 messages from the mayor.
4.
She has to lead a public meeting on economic development, which is always controversial, in 15 minutes.
Oh, and just to make sure she has 0 sanctuary, no safe space at all, her boyfriend's mother is coming to stay for the weekend.
And she's never met the woman.
It sounds impossible, but there are students listening to this right now nodding along saying, yeah, that was my Tuesday.
Exactly. And what Susan is experiencing isn't just busyness. It's the specific pathology of public service stress. It's the collision of political volatility, public accountability, conflicting demands, and personal life obligations all happening in the same hour.
So our mission today is to move beyond just commiserating with Susan. We need to understand the mechanisms of why she feels like her head is going to explode. We need to break down the biology, something called the general adaptation syndrome, and then get into the strategies that might actually save her.
And we also need to debunk this myth that stress is always the villain. Spoiler alert for everyone listening. You actually need stress to function. If Susan had 0 stress, she wouldn't get anything done either.
Okay, let's unpack that. Section 1, the biology of stress. The text is very, very firm on this. Stress is not just an attitude problem. It's not all in your head.
No, it's in your cells. And to understand this, we have to talk about Hans Seil. In the academic world, he's basically the father of stress research.
Right.
And he provided a definition that is deceptively simple. He said, stress is The nonspecific response of the body to any demand made upon it.
Non-specific response. That phrase always trips people up. What does that mean in plain English?
It means your body is a blunt instrument. It doesn't discriminate. Biologically, your body doesn't know the difference between a bear chasing you, a deadline looming, or a bad traffic jam.
So it's all the same to my nervous system.
It responds to the demand for adaptation, not the specific type of demand. So the physiological reaction is almost identical.
So whether I'm winning the lottery or getting fired, the biological machinery kickstarting in the background is surprisingly similar.
Precisely. It's a physiological chain reaction. And it all starts in the hypothalamus. You can think of that as the command center in your brain. It perceives a threat or a demand, and it hits the big red button.
The fight or flight response. We hear that term all the time. But walk us through the actual cascade. What's happening inside Susan's body?
Okay, so the hypothalamus signals the pituitary and adrenal glands, and you get this massive dump of adrenaline and cortisol into your bloodstream. Your heart rate spikes
Why? What's that for?
to pump blood faster. But not just anywhere. This is the crazy part. The blood actually rushes away from your skin and your digestive system and gets rerouted to your major muscle groups and your brain.
Which explains why you get cold hands or a stomachache when you're terrified. Your body is literally shutting down the non-essential systems like digestion to prep for combat.
Exactly. Your liver starts pumping out glucose like crazy because it thinks you need quick fuel to run or fight. Your pupils dilate so you can see the threat better. It's basically a superhero transformation designed to save your life in the wild.
But Susan isn't in the wild. She's in an ergonomic office chair.
And that is the fundamental mismatch of modern life. We have a Paleolithic biological system trying to navigate a bureaucratic world. So you're sitting perfectly still, but your blood is boiling with rocket fuel that you aren't burning off.
Now, the text brings up a really interesting nuance here regarding gender. Historically, most of this fight or flight research was done on men, or, male animals. But you flagged a study by Shelley Taylor and her colleagues from 2000 that adds a wrinkle to this.
This is fascinating stuff. Taylor suggested that fight or flight isn't the whole story, especially for women. She proposed a tend and befriend response.
Tend and befriend. That sounds a lot nicer than fighting or fleeing.
Well, it's evolutionary logic. Think about it. If you are a female in the wild, maybe you're pregnant or you're caring for offspring, fighting might get you killed, and fleeing might mean leaving the vulnerable behind. Neither is a great survival strategy.
Okay, that makes sense.
So the biological imperative shifts. It shifts toward nurturing behaviors, that's the tending, and forming alliances with the social group, that's the befriending, to create basically a wall of protection.
So while the male response might theoretically lean toward an aggressive outburst or, just withdrawing, the female stress response might manifest as seeking social support, or maybe micromanaging the team's well-being.
Exactly. It suggests that humans have this broader repertoire of survival mechanisms than just punch it or run away.
Yeah.
But, and this is the key point, regardless of the behavioral output, the internal toll is still there. You cannot stay in that high alert state forever.
Which leads us directly to the General Adaptation Syndrome, or GAS. Sile mapped this out, and I think visualizing this chart is really helpful for the exam. It has 3 distinct phases.
Right. Picture a graph. Stage 1 is alarm. That's the immediate shock, the phone ringing with a police incident. Your resistance momentarily drops, then it spikes as the adrenaline hits. This is the rush.
Okay, so that's the immediate reaction, the jolt.
Then you move into stage 2, which is resistance. And this is the tricky phase. The initial shock is gone. You appear normal. You're functioning. But internally, your body is working overtime to adapt to this new higher level of stress.
You might even feel energized here, right? Like you're really on your game.
Totally. You're powering through that strategic plan. You tell yourself, I'm handling this. I've got it under control.
Yeah.
This is the phase where public servants live, isn't it? That constant state of, I'm coping.
It is, but you're basically running on borrowed resources. Your body is keeping your blood pressure artificially high. It's keeping that glucose pumping. And if the stressor doesn't go away, if Susan keeps having days like this for a month, for a year, she hits stage 3.
Exhaustion.
The crash.
The adaptive mechanisms literally collapse. And this isn't just feeling tired. This is where the damage becomes permanent. The text mentions that during that resistance phase, things like fatty acids are released into the bloodstream for energy.
And for the fight or the flight.
Right. But if you don't use them, because you're sitting at a desk, they just circulate.
And eventually they accumulate in the arteries.
Exactly. The immune system crashes because it's been suppressed for too long. This is why long-term chronic stress is directly linked to heart disease, kidney failure, and just being susceptible to every cold that goes around the office. Stage 3 is where the body says, I quit.
That is a grim picture. But before everyone listening pauses this deep dive to check their pulse, let's pivot to section 2, the good, the bad, and the inverted U, because you mentioned earlier that we actually need stress.
We do. If you had zero stress, you wouldn't be zen, you'd be dead. Or, professionally speaking, you'd be useless. So we have to distinguish between distress and eustress.
Eustress. Eustress, like euphoria.
Exactly. Eustress is the Greek prefix for good. Eustress is healthy, positive stress. It's the butterflies you get before a presentation you've actually prepared for. It's the thrill of a promotion or a new challenge. It forces you to adapt, but in a way that builds your capacity.
So it's really about the context and the dose.
Correct. And the best way to understand the dose is the Yerkes-Dodson law, which is more commonly known as the inverted U.
I love this concept because it explains so much about productivity. So for everyone listening, imagine a graph where the vertical axis is performance and the horizontal axis is stress or arousal.
Okay, so start at the bottom left.
Yeah.
Low stress. What does your performance look like there?
It's low. You're bored. You're apathetic. You're probably scrolling on your phone instead of working.
We call that rust out. There's no stimulation. You miss details because you just don't care. Now, move up the curve as stress increases. You start to reach the top of the U.
The sweet spot, the zone.
This is where peak performance happens. Your heart rate is up slightly, your focus is narrowed, distractions fade away, you are locked in. This is where you want your surgeon to be during an operation or your pilot during a landing. Alert, engaged, but not panicked.
But the problem is, in the public sector, we don't stop there. We just keep adding more and more weight to the bar.
And that's when you slide down the right side of the curve. Distress takes over. The brain shifts from focus to survival. Cognitive tunneling sets in. You can't see creative solutions. You become anxious, disorganized, and eventually you just shut down.
So the goal of management, then, isn't to eliminate stress completely, because that would be the boring side of the curve. It's to keep your team at the top of that U.
Precisely. You want to avoid the boredom of the bottom left and the burnout of the bottom right.
But when we fail at that, when we let people slide into that high-stress distress zone, the costs are absolutely staggering. I was looking at the statistics in the chapter, and they are terrifying.
They are legitimate public health crisis numbers. I mean, stress is linked to 7 of the top 10 causes of death: heart attacks, strokes, ulcers. And that's just the physical. Then you have the psychological costs. Anxiety affects 1 in 6 Americans. Depression is a massive risk.
And the behavioral side effects: drug abuse, aggression, overeating or undereating. It becomes this vicious cycle of self-destruction.
And for the pragmatists listening who are thinking about the budget, look at the organizational costs. The text estimates that 70% of absenteeism is stress-related.
70%. That can't be right.
Think about that. 7 out of 10 times someone calls in sick, it's likely because their body is in that exhaustion phase of GAS, or they just mentally cannot face the office. That costs billions. And it's not just people staying home, it's accidents.
Right, because if your cognitive processing is distorted by stress, your reaction time slows down.
And if you are a data entry clerk, maybe you make a typo. If you are a police officer, a nurse, or you're operating heavy machinery for the Department of Transportation, that slowed reaction time costs lives.
The text even mentions workplace violence. It says it's the second most common type of fatal workplace event, and that connects right back to that opening quote. If people don't have healthy coping mechanisms, that desire to choke someone stops being a metaphor.
It's a straight line from unmanaged organizational stress to tragedy.
Okay, so we've established the stakes. Stress is biological, it's dangerous in high doses, and it's expensive. Now let's talk about where it comes from. Section 3. Sources of stress in public service.
We can look at this through a few different lenses. First, there's the general life lens. The text introduces a famous tool called the Holmes-Rahe Life Stress Inventory.
This is the one that assigns a point value to different life events to predict your likelihood of getting sick.
Right, they call them life change units. Some of the high-impact ones are obvious. Death of a spouse is at the top, 100 points. Divorce is a 73. A jail term is 63.
But what I found fascinating, and frankly kind of validating, were the happy events that made the list.
This goes right back to that biological definition of stress as adaptation. Anything that forces you to adapt costs energy. So marriage gets a 50.
50 points for getting married.
Pregnancy's a 40, even a vacation gets a 13.
And Christmas or Hanukkah gets a 12.
Oh, chuckles. I think for some families, that number should be much, much higher. But the point is, even good change requires your body and mind to adapt. If you get a promotion, get married, and move to your dream house all in the same year, you might be incredibly happy, but your cumulative stress score is through the roof. You are at a high risk of illness.
That's the personal context. But let's zoom in on the work-specific stressors, especially for public administrators like Susan. The text breaks this down into role issues, which I think are the bread and butter of this course.
Absolutely. If you understand these three terms,
Mm-hmm.
you understand 90% of organizational friction: role conflict, role ambiguity, and role overload.
Let's start with role conflict. This isn't just, I have a conflict with my boss. It's more complicated than that.
No, it's structural. It's when complying with one part of your role makes it impossible to comply with another part. The text uses a fantastic study by Janet Vincent on Child Protective Services workers to illustrate this.
This one really stuck with me. It's the core identity crisis of that entire job.
Think about it. These people are hired as social workers.
Hmm.
Their training, their degree, their entire passion is about helping. They want to build trust with families, offer resources, and keep families together. That's one role.
But the job requires them to be investigators.
Right. Which is the other role. They have to enforce the law, collect evidence of abuse, and potentially remove a child from a home. You physically cannot be a supportive helper and a police investigator at the exact same moment with the same person.
So every time they knock on a door, their brain is literally at war with itself.
That internal clash creates massive, massive stress. It's not just hard work, it's psychological dissonance. They are constantly tearing themselves in two directions.
Then there is role ambiguity.
That one's simpler. It's just the lack of information. What exactly is my job? How am I being evaluated? What does success look like here? If you have to guess what's expected of you every day, you are burning energy on anxiety rather than execution. It's like playing a game where the rules change every 10 minutes and no one tells you.
And finally, role overload.
Too much to do, not enough time or resources, which is practically the motto of the public sector.
And that leads us to what the text calls the public service paradox. We tend to hire people who are intrinsically motivated. They want to do good. They want to save the world.
And that very virtue becomes their Achilles heel. Because they care so much, they take on more work. They don't say no, and they are facing wicked problems, things like homelessness, poverty, addiction. These aren't things you can fix and check off a list by 5:00 p.m.
So you have a workforce that is deeply emotionally invested in solving unsolvable problems, and they often have high responsibility but very low control.
And that combination, high demand, low control, is the absolute gold standard for creating burnout. The text cites studies on nurses, air traffic controllers, and police. They deal with life and death. That's the ultimate responsibility, but they're often bound by strict bureaucratic rules on how they can act. They have very little autonomy.
We also have to touch on interpersonal conflict. The text mentions bullying.
It's far more common than we like to admit. One study cited 35% of respondents reporting workplace bullying. But in the public sector, this ties directly into the concept of organizational justice.
This is such a key term for the course. It breaks down into 3 types, right?
Yes. First is distributive justice. Is the outcome fair? Did the right person get the promotion, the raise? Second is procedural justice. Was the process used to decide fair and transparent? And third is interactional justice. Was I treated with dignity and respect during the process?
And the research on this is so interesting. It shows that even if I don't get the promotion, so distributive justice fails for me, if the process was transparent and my boss treated me with respect, my stress levels are much, much lower.
Exactly. But if it feels rigged, or if I'm treated like a number, that perception of injustice triggers the same physiological alarm as a physical threat. It's a violation of the social contract, and our brains are wired to react very strongly to that.
So we have a clear picture of the beast. It's biology, it's the environment, it's the very nature of public service. Now, let's get to the part everyone is waiting for. Section 4. Strategies for managing stress. How do we actually fix this?
We have to attack this on 2 levels. You can't just yoga your way out of a toxic workplace, but a great workplace can't save you if you don't take care of your own biology. So let's start with the personal, the biology hacks.
The first one is exercise, and I love the explanation here because it finally clicked for me. It's not just about getting fit or looking good.
No, it's about completing the stress cycle. Remember that whole fight or flight response? Your body dumped adrenaline, glucose, and fatty acids into your blood to help you run from a bear.
But I sat at my desk and stewed about an email.
So those chemicals are still there, just circulating, doing damage. Exercise mimics the fleeing. When you go for a run or hit the gym, your body says, Okay, we are escaping the threat. We are using this fuel. It processes the chemicals and flushes them out. It literally resets your system.
So exercise is basically a chemical cleanser for your stress response that puts a whole new perspective on the post-work gym session. It's not a chore, it's a biological necessity.
Precisely. Then you have the basics, diet and sleep, which we all know.
Hmm.
But I want to highlight mindfulness and meditation.
Some people still roll their eyes at this, thinking it's just a trend.
But look at the mechanism. It's described in the text as short-circuiting the stress response. When you focus on your breath, you are sending a manual override signal to your hypothalamus saying, "We are safe, stand down." It stops that spiral before it hits the exhaustion phase. It's like pulling the emergency brake on a runaway train.
What about attitude? The text talks about psychological resilience and cognitive appraisal.
This is huge. Two people can experience the exact same event, say a budget cut. One person sees a catastrophe, total disaster. The other sees a puzzle to be solved, an opportunity for innovation. That initial interpretation fundamentally changes the biological response that follows.
This connects to Couture's concept of realistic optimism.
Yes. And this is so distinct from blind positivity. It's not standing in a burning building saying, "This is fine." It's facing the brutal facts of the reality. The building is on fire, but holding the unwavering belief that you have the capacity to find a way out.
And gratitude, it can sound a little fluffy, but the science is there.
It really is. Listing things you are grateful for forces your brain to scan the environment for positives. It shifts your focus from threats to resources, which has been shown to lower cortisol. It effectively retrains your brain to look for safety rather than danger.
Then there is social support. This seems so obvious, but we often forget it when we're overwhelmed.
Isolation is a morbidity risk factor, just like smoking or high blood pressure. You need a network. But the text distinguishes between different types of support. You need emotional support, someone to just listen without judgment. But you also need tangible support, someone to help you move a box or watch your kid for an hour. And functional support, someone to remind you that you are actually good at your job when you feel like an imposter.
And we can't forget humor. I have to bring up the example from the text because it's just perfect. The British Columbia Ministry of Environment.
Chuckles. The lip sync video? Oh, it's so good.
Yes, a whole government agency made a video of their staff lip-syncing to Journey's Don't Stop Believin'.
It sounds silly, and I'm sure some taxpayers probably raise an eyebrow. But think about what that does internally. It builds community. It breaks the tension. Laughter actually increases self-efficacy. It signals we are in this together and we are human. That is a powerful, powerful stress buffer.
Okay, moving to time management, taking back control. The text suggests Lykine's ABC system.
A classic. Rank your tasks. A's are critical, B's are important, C's are trivial. Do the A's, ignore the C's. But my favorite tip from this section is what they call the no test.
What is that?
You look at a task on your to-do list and you ask yourself, what would happen if I just didn't do this? And if the honest answer is nothing, or no one would notice, you stop doing it.
That is a terrifying question for a perfectionist in public service.
It is. But we do so many things out of habit or perceived obligation that add zero value. Eliminating them buys you recovery time. It buys you sanity.
Now let's pivot to the organization. We can't put it all on the employee. What is the duty of the agency?
It has to start with recruitment. The text talks about the realistic job preview. Don't sell a candidate a dream if the job is a nightmare. Be honest. If the job is high stress, tell them. You need to hire for the right fit, for people who can handle that environment.
And then job design.
This goes right back to that demand control model. If high demand is inevitable, which it often is, then you must increase control. Give people autonomy. Let them decide how they organize their day or how they tackle the problem. Autonomy is the antidote to helplessness.
The text also mentions EAP's employee assistance programs.
These are such vital safety nets. Counseling, legal aid, financial planning, help with aging parents. It's the organization acknowledging that employees are whole people. If an employee is stressed because their parent is sick, helping them find elder care isn't charity, it's a productivity strategy. It's smart management.
And finally, a really subtle one. Emotional regulation.
Yeah, this is a subtle but important point. We talked about surface acting.
Yeah.
Pasting a fake smile on your face when you are furious. Research shows that leads to burnout fast. Organizations need to encourage deep acting, trying to genuinely empathize with the customer or client, or even better, create a culture where you don't have to fake it constantly, where it's okay to be human.
Okay, we have covered a lot of theory. Let's bring it all home with Section 5, the case study application, the distress at DES.
Right. We meet Diane. She is a Child Protective Service worker, 3 years on the job.
And she is completely falling apart. She has a rash, high blood pressure, stomach pain, anxiety. She's checking all the alarm and resistance boxes we talked about. She is on the fast track to exhaustion.
And just look at her stressors. She has a new supervisor who is emphasizing investigation over social work.
Boom, role conflict right there.
She has an increased workload, role overload. Her husband is in school and they have a sick child, so she has these strict deadlines for daycare pickup work-life conflict.
She is also facing physical danger on calls and doesn't have complete information from the police when she goes into these situations.
That's the physical environment stressor. And notice what she stopped doing. She stopped having lunch with her peers because she's too busy.
So she cut off her social support network just when she needed it most. That is such a classic mistake. We do that all the time.
So if we were sitting down with Diane, applying what we learned in Chapter 4, what do we say? What's the advice?
Well, first I tell her she's not crazy. Her body is responding normally to an abnormal amount of pressure. Her rash, her anxiety, that's not a character flaw, it's a symptom.
Validation is absolutely key. She needs to know this is biology, not weakness.
Then strategy. She needs to force herself to take that lunch break. It's not wasted time. It's a biological necessity to prevent the crash. Reconnect with those people.
Agreed. She should probably use the EAP if they have one, maybe for the family stress or just for counseling. But she also has to address the role conflicts with her new boss.
But can she really just tell her boss to back off? That seems risky.
Maybe not directly. But she can push for role clarity. She can go to her boss and say, I understand the focus is shifting to investigation. Can you help me understand how that should change, how I prioritize my cases? If I spend more time on X, what can I drop from Y?
Ah, so she forces the supervisor to acknowledge the trade-offs, to make the impossible choices explicit.
Exactly. And I think the biggest piece of advice, which the text hints at, is cognitive appraisal. She is trying to be Superwoman, the perfect mom, the perfect social worker, the perfect investigator, all at once.
She needs to give herself permission to acknowledge that she cannot be perfect in a broken system.
If she doesn't set boundaries, the exhaustion phase will make the decision for her, and it will likely be in the form of a hospital stay or just quitting.
It's a tough situation, but understanding the mechanics helps you see the exit strategy. It shifts the problem from I am failing to my system needs adjustment.
Precisely. That's the whole point.
So we have been through the biology, the psychology, the sources, and the strategies. What does this all mean for us as students and future leaders in public service?
It means that stress is inevitable. In fact, to some extent, it's necessary. We need that eustress to be sharp and perform at our best, but managing it requires a partnership. You need your individual coping skills, exercise, perspective, boundaries. But the organization also has a profound responsibility to be fair, to design jobs well, and to support its people.
Right. You can't just breathe deeply if your boss is a tyrant, and a great boss can't fix your health if you never sleep and eat junk food.
Exactly. It's a two-way street. It has to be.
Now, before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with a provocative thought from the end of the chapter.
Go for it.
So the text mentions that happy workers are more productive. That's a standard business case we've all heard. But in the public sector, the bottom line isn't profit. It's human welfare.
Right. We aren't selling widgets. We're managing communities.
So do we have a moral obligation to prioritize employee happiness? Not just because it's a nice thing to do, but because a stressed out public servant, a police officer, a social worker, a city manager might make a split-second decision that negatively impacts an entire community.
That is the ultimate question, isn't it? If your brain is in fight or flight, you lack empathy, you lack cognitive nuance, you see threats where there are none. In public service, that nuance is everything. So yes, I would argue that employee well-being isn't just an HR perk. It is actually a public safety issue.
That is something to mull over as you head into your next shift or your next study session. Good luck with the exam and the reading. Hopefully your cortisol levels are a little lower than when we start.
See you in the next study group.
Bye for now.